that, I'm going to welcome tonight's speaker. This is Dan Metcalfe. He is the founder of Total Balance, and we are so thankful to have him here with us tonight to share his experience and his knowledge on balance and movement and motivating us to be able to do more. So, Dan, go ahead and let us know about who you are and what you can do for us.
Well, thank you so much. First off, really appreciate being able to be here at the NODCC. You have a beautiful family. I got to spend some time yesterday talking with Catherine and with Barbara, and been working with some people with a genesis of the corpus callosum. And so it's really an honor to be invited to your family. I see this often, I speak with groups, but you truly are a family. What I really appreciate is the constant search for improvement of life empowerment that you are all looking for, either for yourself or for your family members or even friends. And so it's an honor to be here. And I'm excited to be able to share some information that really is thinking outside of the box and yet getting results that sometimes can take years, and increasing the specialty that I focus on, which is balance, mobility, movement, and getting the brain to be able to create these neural pathways, even if we can't join the corpus callosum on both sides, to have the brain engage in independent left and right hemisphere action to keep yourself or your family member safe and better movement. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and share, if I can. I'd like to open up with a little video that will be in here, and then just excited to then go and explore and then answer questions from you. So here we go. So this is about brain health for mobility. And I put brain is movement is the brain. It's a complete circle. The brain governs movement, but movement also creates for the brain. And we see that from the first moment that a baby is born, or even before they're born. The movement is part of the development issues. And when we limit the amount of movement, we also limit the ability for the brain to work with the body and the neurochemicals to come back to the brain that's needed to. You'll see up there, I'd say, I love building neural pathways for life, but it has to be safe, it has to be fun, and it has to be real. So with that being said, let's jump on to the next slide. This is for you.
Where it all began, family, friends, the start of life. We are born to live. We are made to heal. We have the power to thrive. Challenges come, and those with the heart to face them with an unwavering spirit rise to meet them head on. There is no accomplishment in letting go of life itself. Leaving the ultimate potential behind is not an option for winners. In the face of adversity, it is not the timid who triumph, but those with hearts ablaze with courage and character to succeed. For within us lies the boundless potential to overcome, to conquer, to win. What we all have is the gift each day brings. What we are willing to do to build the best years ahead separates us from them. Each dawn gives us the opportunity to craft our destiny, to shape the best years ahead with our own hands. Aging is not the enemy. Decline is not our destiny. We do not falter when confronted with the storm. We rise, emboldened by the belief in our own strength. Expectations are set within our own mind. No matter our age, it is us who decide our journey. Live better or quit. In the battle of life, the fiercest opponent is often the doubt that lurks within. Yet it is the voice of our inner warrior that must drown out the naysayers. It is we who hold the power to unleash our own greatness, to defy the odds, to rewrite the narrative of our lives. Those who inspire never listen to those who accept the demise of life itself. Step out of the shadows, reach for the top of the mountain, cast aside the shadows of doubt, and ascend to the summit of your potential. Stand tall, a beacon of hope and determination, illuminating the way for others to find their own strength. We are ready. We are unstoppable. We are victorious.
So with that being presented, I want you to feel emotion as we talk today. This isn't a presentation about facts or about the brain itself and trying to be proving what we know scientifically and yet sometimes have a hard time to achieve in real life. But before we get to that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Dan Metcalfe. I started off playing the lead in Andrew Lloyd Webber shows. You may have heard of Andrew Lloyd Webber. He did the shows Phantom of the Opera, Jesus Christ Superstar, Cats, Starlight Express that I played one of the lead characters in. And it was a great life. Everything was flowing for me until during a performance in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Hilton, I had an accident on stage, fractured my spine, and I was paralyzed where the doctors said that I would be disabled for the rest of my life. You'll know what it's like when you're given a diagnosis and taken away the belief that we can get better. But the doctors didn't know me. When they told me that I was going to be disabled for life, I had to make a decision then. Am I going to listen to those that don't invest as much into me and believe the brilliance of the body that I went on to discover? Or am I going to accept and become a statistic or a label off of somebody else's opinion? Of course, science matters, but it's not the deciding factor, because whenever there's been limitations, there's always been people that have broken through and led many more people through until the science or the belief changes. And that's where we are today. And that's why I'm here to talk today with the success that we've had with brain retraining or improvement for balance mobility. I became a head coach on the Olympic Development Program. Everything was going great. And I also became a trainer at multiple different gyms, including opening my own sports performance gym based on movement. But I was always given those that were suffering. I never was given those that were super fit, because having gone through it myself, many coaches, many trainers didn't want to deal with people that were either injury risk or were struggling. They wanted to have people there that they could show off, or we could just push them and no pain, no gain type of approach and be the tough trainer. I didn't realize at the time what a gift that was going to be for me in life. And I will show you as everything was going great. And again, this video is a little, just know it's a little shocking, but this happened when everything again was going good for me. That was me. I was knocked out for about 3 minutes. Frontal lobe injury hit. When I hit the ground, the back of my helmet hit so hard that already unconscious, I had a break in the helmet on the cerebellum. Part of my brain died. I had to learn to talk again, learn to function, learn to move. And with the testing that went on, I had major damage to the corpus callosum, where I was down about 80 to 90% of the communication between the left and right hemisphere. Today, you'll see I'm completely healthy. But again, I had to take on the decision. And I went through depression. I went through PTSD. I went through putting on a lot of weight because they wanted to put me on drugs and they wanted to basically limit me and become a statistic. But I was a real person. I'm a name. I'm not a number. And that goes for everyone here today and everybody in the world out there. So going through the training and having to go and decide, how can I get my brain to function again? I decided, because nobody was really helping me, and we were going through COVID and there wasn't as much accessibility to see people as well. I decided to go and study the brain and go in depth into neuroplasticity. It was an incredible journey. And along the way, I was able not only just to heal myself, but come back smarter than I was before. Because the truth is, the brain is the greatest technology in the world. And it's incredible when we unleash it and don't limit it, what it can do. But to do that, we have to understand how the brain works and what we can do to stimulate growth or create neural pathways or give it permission to go to work when often we're turned around and told again what we're limiting. And you'll see in one of the slides I'm going to share you, there's a saying in there that's so dynamic. So when we look at the brain and understand how it works, and we start looking specifically at the genesis of the corpus callosum or the disorders within the corpus callosum, we know that the brain will only develop, as you'll see down here, when it makes mistakes. So let me explain that to you. When we were born as babies and we tried to learn to walk, we didn't learn by not making mistakes. What we were born with was roughly 86 billion brain cells. And each brain is unique and individual, but the neurons that are there are not yet aligned. In other words, we've all got roughly the same amount of brain cells when we're born as we do as adults. We just haven't structured how they're going to think, what, wires together, fires together. And so as babies learning to walk, we would try and roll over. That was the first engagement of the proprioception of trying to move from either seeing, copying, hearing, smelling, tasting, the certain senses that we developed. And as we turned over and began to, roll on our front and then try and crawl, what's happening? The brain is developing all these neural pathways to all over our body relative to sensory, to touch, to feeling, to movement. And then we'll try and stand up and fall and try and stand up and fall. And you can see we're constantly making mistakes. And yet we were safe. For the most part, if the brain felt safe, even though it was falling, and obviously we were small and low to the ground and hopefully looked after properly as well, the brain had the freedom to develop. Then we were able to stand. But we couldn't take that first step without falling. And then we'd take 3 steps and we couldn't stop. And our parents or someone would catch us and throw us in the air. We'd all laugh and smile. And we loved it. But we learned to run, walk, play, crawl, climb, all the different things if the development of the brain was going on normally. Now, talking with Barbara yesterday and about Nate and what a great guy he was. I got to meet him before we started today. Of her forcing the physical therapist to turn around and say, I want you to teach him to crawl. Don't teach him to walk. That's critical because the neural pathways that are being built have to have the foundation of feeling. So when we look in here and saying, you've got to play, you've got to create messaging in the brain, you've got to create proprioception, and that's the sensory messaging going back from what we're doing into the brain for the brain to adjust. Sounds very simple, and it kind of is, provided we're doing the right things. But each brain would develop at its own speed. When we look at the brain development, I'm going to get off of this because I really want to talk down to real life activity rather than the scientific. But we've got the prefrontal cortex that helps with the development. We've got the cerebellum, which is the movement. And we know, even though it's not the complete movement, it's also the most plastic part of the brain. When I say that, and we are again talking about movement in today's get together, if we move, the cerebellum is able to adjust and continue to adapt. When we limit and don't allow movement out of our own fear or other fears of other accidents happening to others, we stop the ability of the brain to control from the cerebellum through the motor cortex and then our neurons going through our body. You'll see in here we've got sensory feedback, which is you touch something that's hot, you pull your hand away because you're feeling it, then the brain learns if the water's steaming, don't touch it. We also get it if we step in a puddle, we feel the water, or we step on something and it wobbles. That's our proprioception of sensory feedback going to the brain. Of course, then we have the corpus callosum. That's the left and right hemispheres. You know better than me of how do we coordinate the feeling of left and right movement to keep the body centered as one. Then we go on to, again, rethinking what we're doing in the brain. So as we continue to develop, we rethink, and then we're able to, again, have multiple different abilities within one movement. If the ground changes, so can we alter the body. And then we have message adaptation, which is the ability then to take new information or information given to us as we move or advised from other people, and we repeat. And this is a constant circle that goes on. As we go into the next one, these are the paths to improvement. You'll look up here on the top left-hand side, safety is number one. If the brain doesn't feel safe, there's a part of the cerebellum called the pyramis. That pyramis is attached to the periaqueductal gray, which is kind of the center of our brain, that will warn if there's a danger coming up or we feel danger. Now, that can happen for us, or it can happen for someone that we're watching. So, for example, if you feel somebody else is in danger because of your experience, that message will be sent and you'll tell that person it's dangerous, and then they'll slow down and learn to be fearful from the messaging that we're giving. Or for ourselves, if we're in a situation that we know that was dangerous or we had an accident before, we naturally slow down by brain control, even if cognitively we know we're okay. And the easiest way to explain that, imagine you're walking to the edge of a sidewalk, a curb, and it's a 4-foot drop. We walk there, we feel really confident, we stop, we look left and right, and then we cross the road. If we walk to the edge and it's a 300-foot drop, even though it's still the same edge, we begin to slow down much longer. That is the brain controlling us, because the brain is created for two reasons: to keep us safe, for the number one reason, which is to keep us alive. Everything outside of that comes from our mindset. So the brain would love for us to sit down and do nothing all day except eat and refresh and make sure we're good, because its job is to keep us alive. That takes away danger. But our mindset, the way we think, will determine the ability of the brain. And I want to say that again. The way we think will determine the ability of the brain. So again, we go into here, we've got individual variability, confidence building, both in the person doing it and those in the team around them. We've got to feel confident. We have to have nervous system stimulation within the brain. If we're not stimulating the nervous system, there is no emotion, thought, feeling, or change going on. And then we have to celebrate, and this is so critical, micro wins. You want to celebrate micro wins. That reinforces the brain's confidence to continue to do what you're doing. And then you want to be able to track it, have fun days, and know that during the good days or the bad days, there's still development going on. And it says here, brain adapts when it's challenged, when it's safe, when it's repeated, and when it's emotionally supported. And we know emotional support can be really tiring. It can also be really euphoric when you see things going on. So I want to tell you a quick story. There was a young lady that I was training. She was 13 years old. Her name's Ella. And she was having a lot of problems going into high school, going from middle school, getting ready for high school, couldn't go to dances, wasn't really feeling confident. The parents were scared that she was going to be teased. She couldn't get up, like I say, and dance. And so I was invited to go down and work with her in San Diego. And so I took down this brain training device that I know we can't rebuild the corpus callosum theoretically. It hasn't really been tracked. But we know within the brain, there's new neural pathways that will help the left side get strong and the right side get strong and feel what's going on. So even if they're not interconnected, they're working together. Well, relatively quickly, it was incredible to see the change in Ella, where by being on the device and playing, not training, because we also know attention to detail, focus, wanting to not be told what to do sometimes can be a blocker to getting the work done. But she went on going to dances. She went on getting to horse riding, which she wasn't able to do before. She started winning medals in horse riding. And the success story, the beauty that emerged from her, but just as much from her family, seeing the success and removing their fear of protecting her when what she needed to do was go in and face the reality that she was better than anybody thought she was. All we had to do was lead that path to her, and then encourage her to walk it with the support of her family. As we went on from there, I want to quickly touch on, because I want to, again, get off of too much of the science and talk. But this is the saying that I love: never speak limitations. I say that to all of you. Doctors impregnated me with the idea that I would be disabled for life. And whatever we say goes into the brain. If we accept it, the brain then would take that as truth. No different than a computer. You put a program into the computer will say, that's my program. And if the computer can't read the program, it becomes a faulty program. It will still keep going to it because that's what it's been told. It's the same with us. If we allow the message to go in that this is the best it can be, so will the brain end up doing the same thing. So again, your body hears everything your mind says. And as Henry Ford said, if you believe you can or you can't, you're right. Now, I'm a huge believer that everybody here today and everybody that's part of the NODCC is here because you believe in what you're doing. You believe there's better. If you didn't, you wouldn't be here. And so it's so important that, again, we re-emphasize never speak limitations. Why it matters? Your body hears everything your mind says. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to those that are struggling and give them belief, because that's what they need. Hope is nice for other people, but hope can be a procrastinator because we sit and we wait for people to come and help us. I say, be kind to yourself and believe in yourself and believe in others, because belief is an actionable word. If you believe you can do something, you're going to go do it. If you hope, you'll sit there and wait because you're not fully confident. And that first step is critical. There's so many stories I could share with you. I'd like to share one really quickly as well about my mother. My mother's 87. She won't be happy I just said that. I shouldn't have said that, but my mother's 87. She's a doctor. She had a stroke at the age of 79, and she had to give up line dancing. Now, you may be saying, well, what's this relative to the corpus callosum? Well, I look at it this way. When the brain has an area that shuts down because of a neurological impact, we believe that the rest is going to be a decline. So I went over to visit her, not knowing she'd had a stroke. And she took me in on her birthday, her 80th birthday. And she said, to my brother and sisters and myself, I had a stroke. I said, well, you're doing pretty well. I thought she was just aging. She was just looking worse because she was aging. And I hadn't seen her in 4 years. And I said, what's the hardest thing? She goes, I can no longer line dance. I said, why is that? She goes, well, I tried to go, but my body doesn't react the way it should. And this is really getting to the point for everybody here. She goes, if I try to move my right foot, I'm thinking it's not moving. Or I know I should, but I haven't thought it and it's not moving. So I'm either a danger to others bumping into me, or they're going to knock me over and I'm going to get hurt. So I sent her my training system. 5 days after using it, she went back to line dancing. 5 days. It was a year after her stroke, but 5 days after using it. I suddenly started getting called into stroke survivor systems. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physical therapist. And I would go to these neurofit centers and start training. I was getting more out of them in 15 minutes than physical therapists were in 3 months. The reason being, I didn't limit what we could do or go slow. I'm like, the brain is brilliant. And we could look at that with Kim Peek, that many of you, or maybe all of you, have heard of. The original Rain Man that Dustin Hoffman based his story of Rain Man on. What a brilliant brain he had, that he could read 2 pages of a book at the same time, one through each eye, remember it, and became an absolute genius that many of you will know, if you don't already know. He still had problems with his movement, but they worked on it. And when I look at the power of the brain, the corpus callosum is not a limiter. There's so much power and potential that you have within that empowerment, because your brain is unique, it's special. And if we train it correctly, we have no idea where it can go and how far it can. But when you look in the bottom right-hand corner, it's a jewel, it's a diamond, it's special. Treat it the way it is. And then, just to leave this one up here, because I want to get off of this page, so that I can really speak with you and talk to you and explain things, so that you can understand how you can activate your brain, the potential you can go to, the impact that movement and trust and safety and playing will continue to develop the brain and the brain to body connection and the body to brain connection. That's what I'm really here for today. And again, looking at the success that we've had, I've trained fortunately over 70,000 people. And Ella was the first one that I trained with ACC, apologies, ACC. It was eye-opening that my training was now transcending off of what I originally thought it was, which was just balance training. I suddenly had blind schools reaching out because people that were blind were improving their balance by, again, training the brain through safe freedom movement. I had Parkinson's. I got over 800 people that I train with Parkinson's right now to reverse the neurological decline. But when I started working with Ella and realizing I didn't need to create the corpus callosum, I had to give the brain the freedom to find its own way to make up for what was missing. And what we made up was an incredible change in life. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing. I want to jump back in here. And if there's any questions that anybody has, how I can help you, or questions that you have for the brain work, please feel free to go ahead and drop those messages in the chat. Or if anybody would like to unmute as we continue the presentation, I'm totally here for you as well. So, Catherine, anybody, I'm trying to see right now if there's any chat messages coming. No messages. Okay, so let's talk. I think you're on mute, Catherine.
I don't see any just yet, but I was going to say that when you and I talked yesterday, I don't know if you want to touch more. You gave this wonderful explanation about going to the edge of a sidewalk or the edge of a cliff, um, and relating that to your product. And I just thought that was very neat to hear. I didn't know if you wanted to touch a bit more on that.
Yeah, so this goes down to the safety. We talked about it a little bit. I said it just a little bit ago about the difference of the safety and going to the edge. But it comes down to, again, the brain will never allow you to be in a position of unsafe movement. It will slow you down. We see that, for example, when people, and all of you will have experienced this, as somebody ages, they start walking more carefully. They start lifting their feet less. They start shuffling, what I call the senior shuffle. Their eyes are fixed to the ground. And the reason that's all going on is because they no longer feel safe. So the brain now is saying, I need all my attention put onto the movement that I'm doing. But it's not they can't lift their foot. They just want to keep both feet on the ground. Now, once we start going into what I said was the pyramis in the cerebellum, and this goes for all of us, when we can release the fear that we're feeling from movement and make the brain feel safe, we're also free to move better, move faster. We're able to move in ways that we haven't done before. So if I talk about the system that I have, it's actually a balance board, but it's not the board that's the difference, it's the program. And on the board, there's handles. Now, on those handles, the reason they're there isn't to make it safer on the board, it's for the brain to understand that you're safe on that board. And then what we need to do is we need to play. Now, adults, seniors like to be trained. So when we get into the training and getting the brain to join the body neurological messaging better, faster, quicker, stronger, with different speeds, so can you turn around at that point and create the path, the plan, the program that will help you continue to progress day by day. When you have children, children are going to show off the best when they have the freedom to play, but it has to be in a safe environment. I went up to the Orange Grove Center out in Chattanooga and worked there with children that were autistic and those that had autism, and cerebral palsy. And I started training some kids out there, and I couldn't believe how quickly the doctors jumped out of the chair with their cameras on and couldn't believe in literally 5 minutes. There was a young boy came in who had cerebral palsy, had on his um, support round his back. He was hunched over, couldn't, stand upright. And within 5 minutes, he was standing upright and looking and laughing and playing. And it's incredible that they couldn't believe what was happening because of the brain activation, where we took away the pressure, we took away the stress, we took away the demand, and let the brain go to work. It's worked again with people that have scoliosis, because when we stop focusing on the problem itself and let the brain take over the movement and the alignment, the scoliosis began to create its own issues of healing and strengthening the body at the same time. We talked earlier on about when children stand up and start moving, the body naturally strengthens. And you will have all seen this. The more we move, the stronger we get. And then if you go to the gym, you can add strength, endurance, and stamina. But there's billions of people over the world that have never been into a gym, but because they're moving, their muscles are strong enough. And so looking at the freedom of the brain to play and the system that I've created, which if I can just share this story, it's actually pretty funny. When I created it, it was never created as a program. There's a gentleman by the name of Bob Eubanks from the Newlywed Game, many of you may know, or the Rose Parade. And Bob was 79. He was falling. We were at a meeting together because again, back in show business. And Bob couldn't get out of the chair. And when he finally, helped get out, he couldn't walk out the room, confidently. He was shuffling again. So I said I was going to train him, and I own my own sports performance training center at that time. And in 3 weeks, Bob went from the senior shuffle and scared every day to get out of bed. He had no life ahead of him. He was just trying to survive. He'd say to me, I just want to be here for when my son graduates high school. And in 3 weeks, I took that brain and that body and that spirit and soul and his willingness to do the work to 6 miles an hour on a treadmill, running up and down stairs, back playing golf, back on television, back on stage, back performing. But the biggest difference was the ability for him to wake up every morning excited for the day ahead, because he no longer had the fear of falling, which was obviously we knew was a major risk, especially at that age. So there's a saying that I say that I love. It's part of what I teach. The magic we seek is in the work we avoid. The magic we seek is in the work we avoid. Now think of it this way. All of you have experienced something in a positive direction that you didn't know would happen. All of you have experienced something that maybe a doctor or a physical therapist or somebody with more knowledge, supposing you said, would take a year, would take 2 years, may never happen. And before their expectation, the change has already happened and begun and moving in the right direction. And you've shocked them. If you're willing to step outside of the box of what people are telling you are possible, and you put in the trust, the safety, the playing, the willingness to try, and the belief that you're made, or your child, your partner, your parent is made to heal, it's incredible the power that you have. So with that in here, let me go back to some of the questions, because I love these are coming in.
Great ones in there for you.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted me to read them off, or if you want to look through and go ahead and answer them one at a time.
I'm absolutely fine to read these off if it's better for you. I'll just say the first name because of YouTube. That's right. So Saffron, what exercises would help to train a 20-year-old non-mobile man? Okay, so the first thing we've got to do is get the activation from the brain to the body. So when you say non-mobile, we're not talking, I'm presuming, a paralysis state. It's someone that can't get up and move for themselves, so you're having to help. So one of the things that we have is movement in a chair. It's important that we get movement going, even, and I take this back to my own days when I was paralyzed. I've got to start playing games of Can I move my fingers? Can I move my toes? I always work from the extremities back in. The reason being, I can get into this a little bit deeper. We've all heard of muscle memory. And muscle memory, when we talk about a non-mobile person, we say, well, they haven't moved their muscles, but there is no such thing as muscle memory. And let me explain this to you, because I used to preach muscle memory all the time when I was a head coach on the Olympic program. As I said, I talked about muscle memory until I discovered it's not there. If you took a muscle and cut it out of a body and put it on a table, it's not going to move. And people say, well, it's because it's no longer in the body, it's dead. But if I took an electrical impulse and I put the electrodes at each end and fire an electrical current through it, that muscle will still jump. It's the electrical charge that gets muscles moving. So now, if I look at that and say, well, the reason my muscles move isn't because they've got a memory or need a memory. It's because there's neurons that are being fired through my body. So if it goes to the bicep and it says, all right, my hand, okay, I want to clench my fist. My brain goes, clench the fist. It goes into the cerebellum, up into the motor cortex, sends down the neurons through our body, and then we do it. And then if it says let go, it does it. So this is the neurons that are getting the muscles to actually contract, or the ligaments, tendons that are controlling as well. So if I can get the end of my fingers to start feeling, everything from here through here would now start going. Now, if somebody doesn't want to have the confidence, or they don't want to be told what to do, then I say find games. Find things that you can do, even if it's just touching fingers. Touch my finger, touch my finger. Can we get 10 in the space of 30 seconds? Can you do this? Can you move this? Now, I'm talking an easy path, because I'm not there working, but everyone has a solution. If we look at what we can engage to get toes moving, to get fingers moving, then we can go to whole fingers moving. Then we can go to wrists and fingers going. Think of crazy little games, even getting a ball. Can you roll the ball and then pick it up and roll it again? These are the type of things that if we're playing, people will engage and they get bored, but it doesn't matter. It's that we started. And then for the feet, I'd have it, can you just wiggle your toes? This is what I went through with the paralysis. I had to learn to pick up a nut and a screw and put it and line it up and then put it on. It took me 6 months of arduous work to be able to get that fine dexterity again. Then you'll have it where, can you tap your feet? Can you put music on? Can you get them to just tap in time with the music? But if they're not tapping in time, that's not the issue. We don't need that. We just need to get them tapping. Then can you lift your knees up and down? Then can we get you to just rock forward and backwards? Can we then get you to rock forward and backwards? And I'm going to pull on your arm so you begin to feel the movement of standing up. And I think you get the idea of what I'm saying, going on and on. It's got to be a progression. It can't be time limited. And one other thing I'll add to this, it's got to be positive. It's got to be removing a frustration of all parties involved. And it has to be searching for that release of dopamine of I'm going in the right direction. Dopamine, the chemical release in the brain, is the reward drug. Right? It's the one that naturally gets released, that actually engages and controls part of our muscles. I've been working with a lot with Parkinson's, but it goes across the board of everybody. If we want to improve muscle strength, there has to be positive, even if it's not working. So I tried it, it didn't work. Don't go, it didn't work. Go, I'm glad because I'm one day closer. I'm proud of myself. Or if you're working, I'm proud of you for doing it. Because if you can turn around and share that, people will turn around and feel, and that gives the chemical release that engages the muscles while the neurons are working. So I hope that helps a little bit. Feel free to drop another question if you want more, but unless I'm, specifically working with one person, then we can come up with a specific routine there. Barbara said, what practical steps can families do to help balance? Well, you've got to play. It's the number one thing. Think about babies growing up. You've got to have the freedom to play to improve balance. I even have it, and I'm super healthy and fit now, but sometimes on the way to the gym, I'll stop at a kid's playground early in the morning. There's no one there. and I'll jump on the swings and I'll swing and I'll go up a slide and slide down and suddenly realize there was a lot of morning dew and now my pants are soaked. And I'll get on the roundabouts and different things because the brain activates through play. So the practical steps, number one, make it a safe environment. Number two, make sure there are games that are fun to do, whether it's something along the lines of trying to catch a balloon, because the balloon moves nice and slow. And so, you can have it where you're sitting on a sofa. If somebody's really not very mobile or they're prone to falling too often, they can be on a sofa and throw a balloon. They got to try and catch it and come back, and they're beginning to engage in the feeling of moving side to side, and you're engaging the core. And even if you go to the side, your feet engage. And then you could say, okay, stand up, let's do it. And you put, and they've got the sofa close to them. If they're feeling off, they can land on the sofa or put them on a bed on their knees. So these type of things are great because safety has to be first. We've got to then make sure it's fun. We've got to have a challenge where there's a success at the end. Now, with the board that I have and used with Ella and so many thousands of people, the beautiful thing is it's one of the safest things you can be on. I was able to put, like I said, children on it that have cerebral palsy, that were major fall risks. And at the same time, I got people 100 years old that haven't walked in 5 years in wheelchairs, got them back up walking. It just has to be done at a speed that allows for success and for fun in there as well. So I hope that helps, Barbara. Again, if you want more clarification, please ask again. I love this one. I want to say your name right, Diona. If it is, it's a beautiful name. How much play do you recommend for kids during school day and any activities in particular? Yeah, I'm a big believer. The more you can play, the better. We know with kids that are not suffering from a genesis or disorder of the corpus callosum, if they can get out and play every hour for 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, so then you got 50 minutes back working and then play, the brain changes, the focus changes, the stress changes, the release. In boys, it's different than girls, but boys need to have that testosterone feeling of movement. And when we limit movement, and sadly, we've seen that a lot in schools nowadays with not as much organized sports or inclusive activities, it's more parent sign up. We're losing the ability of balance. I'll tell you a quick little story here, which really makes sense. I was a football player, soccer player back in England, and Manchester United is one of the most well-known teams worldwide. And they were discovering that their kids at 14, 13, 14, 15 in their academies were getting injured. And these were regular, normal, healthy, fit, athletic kids. Because every time they hit the ground, they were getting damaged. They were either breaking bones, fingers, twisting, where they never had that before growing up, ever in the academy. So what they did was they brought in a parkour coach, someone that would teach them how to fall so they could minimize the risk while they were playing the athletic sport of getting injured just from everyday, things that we did. The reason being is the older generation used to play in the playground. They weren't limited. They weren't scared, the teachers or the schools, of potential lawsuits or someone. It was just part of growing up. So we learned to fall, we learned to play, we learned to rough and tumble. And what happened was that carried on into adult life. So I'm a huge believer, let the kids play as much as you can. Certain activities, if someone's a fall risk or more likely to get hurt, then I love sand pits or areas where obviously it's softer. Grass is great. I know a lot of schools also have those cushioned surfaces, not the concrete. So anytime you can be on a soft surface, that's great. And there's certain activities that I love. I love things like basketball from bouncing the ball point of view because it's cognitively challenging. It's rewarding because you get better at it. You're constantly moving and changing your balance. Throwing a ball between people. But one of the things that's really, really good is racket sports. So anytime you can get a racket, table tennis, tennis, I know these are hard to do, but it's not about how good you are, because we know with hand, foot, eye, and coordinated movements for a ball, it's great to do. But as I said earlier, playing on swings, playing on playgrounds, as long as it's safe, if they do fall, I'm a huge fan. Just get moving and do it as much as you can. Araceli, again, I hope I say the name right. You guys have all got beautiful names. From your experience, how can this type of brain wiring and balance training support learning and academic performance? Are there specific strategies parents can implement at home? Interesting, because I just talked about brain training for schools. If you get out and play for 10 minutes, you have better focus for the next 15 minutes. But when you keep somebody set for an hour, the brain's naturally getting tired. We do have obviously our neurons that are in there. We've got to start looking at the energy going to our cells. And part of the release by getting out and playing recharges our cells. We get some natural ATP created going into the mitochondria, which is our energy cells. But there's something else I'd like to add about that as well. When you do balance specific training, and this is all scientifically proven, I've done all the testing in the lab showing, when you specifically do balance training, the brain creates more neuroplasticity than it does at any other time. The reason being, when you start balancing, but you also have to be in a safe environment, you don't want to be on a balance board 30 feet up, and if you fall, you're going to hurt yourself, your brain will stop. But when you, or stop you, sorry. But when you're on a safe balance board and you start going, the brain has to make errors, as we talked about, for it to open up learning. And this isn't just for people that have neurological struggles in life. This is for all of us. When we open up neuroplasticity, that is the ability of the brain to learn something new. We can then take that and transfer it from balance training into learning. In the schoolroom, if you're going to go in and study something, they've proven it's great to go and do 10, 15 minutes of balance training before you go in to learn. The reason it works is because when we go to balance training, the brain goes, oh, I'm off balance. There's something not right. Even though it's safe, it wants to be safer. It wants to be better. It wants to get it right. So the cerebellum goes, what's going on? Well, then the hippocampus will come in and go, I don't know this. I need to learn this. And then suddenly you have the motor cortex going, this isn't what I'm used to. Or I feel a little off today. And the whole brain comes alive to then say, I need to figure this out. I don't know specifically what it is. And so we get this amazing effect of neuroplasticity. This is all your neurons coming awake, figuring out, what do I need to learn? Now, after 10 to 15 minutes of training on the board, which we did a study on with a doctor actually as the subject, and had some incredible changes that went on during that time as well, beginning to remember things that she hadn't remembered in years or couldn't do just by releasing neuroplasticity. We showed that up to 40 minutes from the end of exercise did we then turn round and continue to have that neuroplasticity. It didn't stop when we stopped the balance training. The brain was going, okay, I've got to figure things out. I'm working. Okay, I'm learning stuff. And then suddenly it's open to learn other things outside of balance. And again, you'll see some incredible scientists, Andrew Huberman from, the neuroscientist from Stanford University, talking about this as well. So balance training for me is number one for educational academic performance in a controlled environment, but freedom to play. So the controlled environment is something safe for 10, 15 minutes, let them play, get the neuroplasticity firing, and then go and study. And the nice thing is you will have burned off some energy by playing, that now your body goes, I'm ready to also be at peace, instead of, no, or I want to get up and I just want to move and play. So he can do larger movements, but fine motor skills are harder for him. Great ideas for you. That's great. This is something we've been looking for him, as he can't get in his walker yet. That's one of our ideas. That's great. Thank you so much. Because again, I'm kind of shooting in the dark a little bit with generics, but the larger movements are great. The type of thing you could do as well. I know on the system that I have, we have a red stability ball. It's just a small little ball, but you can get them. I'm not here to sell you a product. I'm here to say this is where we've learned it from. If you can get a soft pad and put his foot on a soft pad and say, can you try and roll your finger or your toes from the outside to the inside? Or can you press just the big toe? Can you press just the little toe? And it's slow going. And I know it, like I said, I went through 6 months of just trying to put a nut on a screw and just turn my fingers. those little things are building these neural connections, and you're doing exactly right. You've got to go from the large movements, get the fine dexterity, and then bring it back. So we bring them all together. But anytime you can work from the brain to the furthest point, which can be your toes there, you're engaging neurons all the way through your system. And congratulations and great job on the work you're doing. Barbara says, thanks. Have patients you work with been able to get Medicaid to cover the equipment? If so, how? Letter from a neurologist. Right now, we are working. We got registered with the FDA. We weren't FDA approved because that takes millions of dollars to put in. And as I said, when I created this system for Bob Eubanks, it was never made to sell. It was just for one person. I just created it to help Bob walk again. And suddenly, like I said, I was getting called everywhere. And then people came in and said, Dan, you've got to make this into a something that people could help. And like I said, we've sold over 70,000 of them because I was doing this on the side. It wasn't my main regular work, but I continued to study for my own brain health and then seeing the results. And so the product itself is actually $399. And I don't mean to try and push it. What I'm saying is it's not the most expensive. And we're coming out with an app that's about to launch, which has games on it for kids as well. So instead of standing there and balancing, you can play games and see your scores go up, but it also tracks brain activity that will allow you to see, the alpha, beta, delta, theta, and gamma brain waves and what's happening while they're working out, as well as being able to evaluate the success that's going on. So my goal and the reason we bought the app out is once the medical world can see what's happening with the board and the results that are happening and people using it, and they can track every workout, then I'm praying that the medical world will come in, the insurance companies will come in and say, this is invaluable. It's creating better health for people. It's not a cost, it's a savings. And once they believe that, then people won't have to come in and dip into their own pockets for health that they should be able to have anyway. So help that goes there. Any fine motor games that would help. Again, we kind of talked about a little thing about the pads or even putting the pads on the fingers. Little things like, can you touch your little fingers, and fingers, can you go through here and touch? Now, can you go the opposite way? So you're cutting through here, going into different things. Can you touch your fingers through here? These are all fine dexterities. Or can you get, magnets and get them to touch together? Or as I had a screw and a nut and trying to get them to line up. But even something as simple as a round peg and a round hole, can they line it up and place it in? What I would suggest is go to, and it's ageless, right? It's not games for people, it's games for results. Go and look at kids' games that are for fine dexterity or for placement, doing jigsaws that may be, bigger pieces down to smaller pieces. So you have to learn how to create and move them. These are all great. Don't look at what games are for age. Look at what games are for building. So the reason kids have these games and they're made for kids is because they're actually teaching them fine dexterity. They're teaching them motor skills to be able to have the ability to move and put things where they want. So invest in those. I have kids games still that I play. Love going out and challenging myself to not lose what I had. And we don't stop playing because we age. We age because we stop playing. I want to say that again. We don't stop playing because we age. We age because we stop playing. Don't grow up. Just become more mature. Keep having fun. Diona, that's great. Super helpful. And I pronounced your name correctly. That's beautiful. Someone says, so can you work for people in Canada? We have online programs. We have live classes that we'll do and work with people in there. Obviously, I'm based in Los Angeles in California right now, and unfortunately, because of the whole tariff stuff, it's hard to ship things to Canada. But we can do it. You have to just reach out to our customer service, and we'll make it happen if it's something that anybody's interested in. Because, like I said, I didn't make this to sell. I didn't make this a product. I made it as a solution for one person and found I'm here to help people. And this has become a passion of life for me as well. Oh, that's awesome. Mary, this is great. We definitely use the balance training for my daughter who's a national level swimmer. I love hearing that. I got an Olympic coach that was working with uh, people that, or kids in swimming that had disabilities. And they used the board. They had a hard time getting their arms and their legs working in coordination while they're swimming. So she got the board, would take it on the edge of the pool, put it on a towel so it doesn't slip. It can't be on a slippery surface. And would have them do motor skill performances on the board. So push with one leg up here, push with the other, going. They changed. They started beating their own personal bests and records because they were able to train the coordination out of the pool instead of struggling going through the water. So I love hearing that. And congratulations. It's brilliant. National level swimmer. I could have done with her skills with when I was racing the Ironman for sure. Um, Loretta says, I taught kindergarten for a long time. The best book I ever used is called Handy Learning. It's the specific written for to build firemen. Thanks for sharing that, Loretta. That's great. And I'm sure that Saffron will really be able to get something from that as well. There's so much good knowledge out there. There's nobody that knows everything. And there's not one thing that fixes everything either. So that's why I say keep playing, keep exploring, keep experimenting. Um, Saffron, thank you so much. So I know that's the all the questions, unless there's more questions that are in there. But if there's anything that you would like, and I really appreciate your time. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you. Um, and I can't say enough. Having gone through being paralyzed and being told I would be disabled for life to completely recovering and racing the Ironman and getting onto racing teams, becoming Nike Coach of the Year in America, it was an incredible journey to show that we are not limited by what others say. We're only limited by what we allow ourselves to believe. And then, obviously, with my brain injury that you saw on the bike, coming back smarter, stronger, more passionate, and younger now than I ever was, it's because the mindset determines our direction. Again, your mindset, what you believe, is what the brain will do, and what you believe will determine where you can go. And of course, we all have down days. I went through depression. It wasn't easy flow, but what we build is resilience. It comes from the Latin resiliere, which means to bounce back. That's really what it means. Resilience doesn't get built going through something. When we're going through it, we've only got what we've got. But when we get through it, we've now got that experience that leads us to the next one. That gives us the resilience, the rebound, the bouncing back to take on more challenges and realize how brilliant all of you are. That all of you are born superhuman. Every single one on here is born superhuman. Think about it. When you were born and that umbilical cord was cut for the first time in your life, in any existence since conception, that baby is 100% on their own with their system. There's no mother now feeding them, the oxygenation. There's no nutrients being fed. And even though the baby may struggle, they got a team around them. There's doctors, nurses, mothers, fathers, families, friends, experts. That body is still taking control of itself. You can only do so much. And think all of you are sitting here having come from a baby that didn't even know how to breathe, that didn't open its eyes, that didn't understand what the neurons were for. And then suddenly you're learning and you're developing and you're growing, even if it's not. And I say we're born superhuman, not born perfect, because perfect is an opinion. But my uncle was born with cerebral palsy and they were told, put him into a home. Don't take him on, he's too much work. But my grandfather, who was a general, a GP, a doctor, said, I looked into my son's eyes and I saw him. It wasn't his body, I saw him. And he ended up having an incredible life, going to work. My mother looked after him. He lived with me and with my family when I was growing up. And because everybody believed in him, he became more than anybody ever thought he could be. And I still believe to this day there was even more if we had had more knowledge and information. So everyone that you're working with, you yourself, you are born superhuman. We're just slowly numbed down or dumbed down over time by people that are limiting your success because either they don't know, and there's nothing wrong with that, they'll do the best they can, or they don't have the time to invest. And you should never let somebody lead that doesn't have as much care for you as you have or for your family. Keep exploring, unleash the miracle inside. And I could go on. I'm going to finish here because I want you to all leave here knowing you're super special. You are, and I'm not just talking, I've lived it. I've helped tens of thousands of people live it. It's not an accident when people recover or improve. It's truly them discovering who they are and unleashing the miracle within.
Dan, thank you so much for being here tonight. Your stories have been very powerful to hear. Your journey is inspirational, and all the people you've helped. I know that everyone on here and our whole NODCC community, we are really looking forward to continuing more with you and working more with you and having this opportunity to learn about your product. And I think you really um, helped and inspired a lot of families tonight just on this call. So thank you so much for being here for us.
Thank you. I believe in everyone here, and I really do because I see miracles happen every day. We call them miracles because they don't happen too often, but everything can happen. And that's the beautiful thing. If you're inspired, go to work because inspiration fades over time. We begin to go, okay, we lose the feeling. Go to work, keep believing in you. And I'm so honored and feel privileged to have been able to spend this time. And if it helps one person, then my life was worth it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.